meeting of the Finance and Operations Committee will please come to order. I will now turn over the Finance and Operations Committee meeting to Co-Chair Dr. Haig.
Thank you, President Brown. Mr. Rogers, please begin with an overview of your agenda items for this evening.
Tonight we have two agenda items, both informational. The first is a review of the 2021-2022 budget and the Act 1 timeline. We will discuss the important deadlines coming up with next year's budget, and this item correlates with Goal 1 of the Upper Darby School District Comprehensive Plan. Agenda item number 2 is the 2020 Bond Issuance update, also informational, and we'll just discuss the finalized 2020 bond issuance and the positive impact that it's had on the district's capital plan. This item also correlates with Goal 1 of the Upper Darby School District Comprehensive Plan.
Great. Please go ahead with agenda item number 1.
So first up is the Act 1 timeline for the 2021-2022 budget. This is a similar presentation as in years past, where we will go through what's to be expected over the course of the budget season. And we like to put this out early on so that the dates are advertised and the public and the board also knows what to expect in the coming months. So what we'll walk through here is what we know at this point, major steps, which are the preliminary budget process or a budget with a opt-out resolution, and then we'll walk into what the Upper Darby School District adopted timeline would be to follow PDE's guidelines. So up first, here's what we know at this point, and just as in any case, in any budget year, at this point in the year, we really don't know much. So far, what's been released by PDE is the 2021-2022 base index and adjusted index have been issued. For the normal budget year, it's a 3% base index and adjusted index of 4.4. You're going to notice that, and this is unlike any other year, I'm showing both last year's base index and adjusted index as well as the 21-22. The reason for this is Delaware County is going through a countywide reassessment, and based on school code, during a countywide reassessment, the district is required to use the prior year's Act 1 index again. So although you'll see that what's been published by PDE and all other districts outside of Delaware County will be operating under the 3 and 4.4 or 3%, and our adjusted index would be 4.4. They may have a different adjusted index. Upper Darby School District will operate under the same guidelines as last year, which is a 2.6% base index up to an adjusted index of 3.8. So what are the major steps for a preliminary budget? And as I stated before, one of the major steps here is for the board to make a decision, just like they have in years past, of going down one of two processes, one being a preliminary budget process or the other being an opt-out resolution. So under the preliminary budget process, here are the major milestones that we have to meet, and there are also many in between, but we'll just look at the main 5. So the first would be adopting a resolution authorizing the proposed preliminary budget display and advertising, and we would do that sometime in November or December. Next would be the public display of the preliminary budget, which has to be done no later than January 8th, 2021, and I'll revisit these dates and why they say no later than. Step 3 would be adopting the preliminary budget no later than January 28th. Step 4 being the final budget no later than May 31st, or the proposed final, and then the actual final budget no later June 30th. So each of these, we get backed into the dates, and they are no later than. Typically, the district modifies those dates to make them suit our needs and also our board meeting and committee meetings, those times where we're able to vote on items like this. So contrary to the preliminary budget process, the major steps for that other prong, which would be an opt-out resolution. If the district decides to go through an accelerated budget opt-out, you do not have to complete step 1. The next step, or the first step, would be actually adopting the accelerated budget opt-out resolution. And we would still want to do that no later than the January 8th timeline. After that, we would step 3 would not be applicable because if you chose to adopt the opt-out resolution. Step 4 would be the proposed final budget, again, no later than May 31st, and the final budget no later than June 30th. And just to reiterate to the public and the board, the difference between an opt-out resolution and a preliminary budget, the preliminary budget gives the board the ability to go above your adjusted index, and again, that's 3.8% in the current year going into this budget cycle. An opt-out resolution would state that the board will not exceed that adjusted index of 3.8%. So here's what we would adopt the Upper Darby committee and board meetings to fit those dates. So if we were to go down the path of a preliminary budget, December 1st, we would ask the board to adopt a resolution authorizing the proposed preliminary budget display and advertising. And then no later than December 22nd, we would provide public display of the preliminary budget. January 12th, which is the proposed likely board meeting for January. They have not been approved yet by the board. They will be during the reorganization meeting in December. But typically the January meeting is the second Tuesday of the month. So that would be likely January 12th. May 11th would be adopt a proposed final, and June 15th would be adopting the final budget. June 15th, again in June, although normal procedure is the second and fourth Tuesday for board meetings and committee meetings, in December and June, we typically have the first and the third Tuesdays of those months. So June 15th would be the second or the third Tuesday of the month, which would be a committee meeting and likely a special voting meeting, just like it's been for the past, I believe, 2 or 3 years of these budget cycles. If the board chose to go with the opt-out resolution and not exceed 3.8% of an adjusted index, we would still ask on December 1st for the board to take action and adopt an accelerated budget opt-out resolution. And then we would go all the way up to those May 11th and 15th dates that match the preliminary budget. Although I'm only presenting those dates, as in every other year, every chance we have at a committee meeting from the start of the budget season to the end, we'll present some type of update to the board, whatever new information has come before us and any changes that have been made. So as you work through from December, you would then expect each committee meeting after that to have some type of presentation. In the opt-out, those would probably start in March or April because we wouldn't be presenting a preliminary budget in that time cycle. Does the board have any questions based on the information that was just provided?
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. I have a question, but I think I want to let Dr. McGarry respond first because I believe he has some further information to add.
Yes, I mean, depending on where the board goes in this direction, you know, historically, obviously, we've considered staying around the base index or less. Given the pandemic and the reality that we have financially, we always keep in mind our taxpayers, and I appreciate that responsibility. I think it's in our best interest, and we will as an administration, regardless of the process the board decides to go, if they opt for the accelerated opt-out. I think it's in our best interest to start sooner than later to talk about the financial realities we could be facing. And I think that if the state of Pennsylvania, through our advocacy work, I know many of us attended as board members and superintendents the Advocacy Day recently, and I attended, I'm a member of this PLUS caucus of urban superintendents from around the Pennsylvania. It's another group that I'm a member of, and we meet monthly and talk about the financial realities that we're facing. You know, we're looking at a $4 to $5 billion state financial issue, and we're hearing once again, similar to the spring of last year, that flat funding or maybe reductions in public education coming our way. What I don't want to have happen in the midst of a pandemic, and I think Board President Brown, you've reiterated this time and time again, you know, we don't want to just make decisions because of a pandemic. The concern in front of this board as we're navigating this, however, is that this pandemic, financially, unless there are federal dollars to make the states whole, as what the terminology that's out there to help alleviate this debt, we could be in a situation where we have to make some significant changes to our academic programming because staffing and programming is where that comes from. So I don't think, you know, we should let history repeat itself and have that conversation in the spring. I think we should be sooner than later from my office talking about what that would look like as we move through this process. So I just wanted to, I appreciate Dr. Haig, you know, regardless of the path, we can only tax people so much. We recognize that. And there's only so much our community can afford. We have to be smart about how we're going to navigate this together. And I'll take the responsibility to continue to provide updates, what that will look like to the public and the board.
just today, an article came out that reiterates how underfunded Upper Darby School District is, as well as several other school districts throughout the Commonwealth. As we all know, that we have been very, very strong advocates, as Dr. McGarry said, for fair funding for our schools, and we do not want that fair funding to come on the back of our taxpayers. I would suggest that we strongly consider the accelerated opt-out, try to keep our taxes as low as possible, given the pandemic, but make sure that we're trying to meet the needs of our students. I do think that with the CARES dollars, we have been able to use them very, very wisely for the safety of our students and to advance our curriculum and our technology here in the school district. And I look forward to a budget that your team will put together, Mr. Rogers, Dr. McGarry, that meets the needs of our students without overtaxing our residents.
Dr. McGarry spoke briefly about the potential pandemic impacts at the state level in terms of state level funding. I have a question that is more towards local funding, since the majority of our revenue comes from local funding. And my question is, would it be possible, given the concern about how the pandemic is impacting local revenue, would it be possible for you to give the board and the community some type of update, say at next month's committee meeting, as far, looking at how receipts are this year compared to sort of prior years, or some type of, maybe a 3-year average kind of thing, so that we can get a sense prior to the budget season starting, a sense of the size of the impact that the pandemic has had on our local receipts.
So absolutely, and when we went through the budget process last year, what we did, nobody really knew what that impact was going to be. So, PASBO put out some projections. Some of the local business managers kind of got together and looked at how they could be projected out. Using the November committee meeting wouldn't be a terrible place to do it, because the flat tax collection period stops October 31st, which is this Saturday. So that would give us the time to reconcile, make sure that we're up to date on the reconciliation, and be able to try to get a snapshot of the prior years. We've never done that comparison publicly, so we'll have to go through, kind of recreate last year's and this year's, and we could put them side by side to be able to look at through flat, where were we last year compared to this year, and even go back a couple of years. And I think that would give a good idea. My personal opinion has been that the impact of something like this, especially on taxes, and I believe I've said this before, is you may not see it, it may lag a year. So when you live in a community or collect taxes in a community where the majority of the property owners are mortgage homes, the homes are on mortgage, you're collecting through escrow. Prior to the pandemic, you had been paying your mortgage up through that time, building up your escrow. So those payments were held in escrow and would have come to us regardless of your current financial standing. So, I'm just putting a disclaimer out there that it's possible that we could see that 1-year delay going in the next year or the year after, right? It's different in how long it took to impact certain individuals. But I just want to throw that out there so that you also don't want to do something like this and think, wow, it's right in line with prior year collections, if it is, and think we're going to be okay next year too, because I do have concern that if this continues the way it has, and the stimulus funds run out and whatnot, the impact may be felt a year or two from now.
That's an excellent point you make, but I think it could be it could be useful to get some type of information around that.
Absolutely, and we'll do that.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. It looks like there are no other comments from the board at this time, so why don't you go on to the second agenda item?
So next, we just have an update on the 2020 bond issuance, which again is informational. So same format as last presentation. We're just going to go through a couple things rather quickly. I just want to touch on a couple points. So I'll start out by saying, I want to applaud the board for being able to move forward through the pandemic in issuing a bond and really keeping focus on our students and the needs of this district from a capital perspective and how that impacts the education of our students. But that being said, the bond has been issued. We've received the funds from the bond. So that's the exciting part, that all of our hard work paid off, the board and the administration included. So what we'll discuss quickly is just the issuance timing. We'll revisit what are the steps that we took to get to where we are. We're going to discuss the positive impact of the bond and also the capital improvements. How do those funds actually impact the district on a project standpoint? So first up, the bond issuance timing. One of the main steps beyond making the decision to go out to bond, which has been in our multi-year financial plan to continue to issue bonds each year to fund our projects, the board actually approved the max parameters resolution on May 12th that would have allowed the district to issue up to a $38 million bond. Next up was a Moody's interview, which Moody's is a rating agency for all major financial industries. It's somewhat of the equivalent of a credit rating for an individual, so you get your FICO score. When it comes to a school district, we actually had to go through an interview process, and there's a rather long questionnaire and a phone interview with a Moody's rating agency personnel who go through multiple questions, kind of question where the district is financially, and then they go out and give you your rating, or on a personal level, somewhat similar to what your FICO score would be. So that happened on August 27th. Moody's turned around there and issued their credit opinion on the district on September 1st, which was an A1 stable, which is consistent with our prior year rating, which I think we should be proud of, considering we are in a pandemic. They saw favorably upon how the board has been managing the district financially and the plans that we have in place. So that's, again, I applaud the board and administration for all the work that we've put forth. Next was they actually went through a pricing and rate lock on September 9th and the settlement on October 1st. So for anybody to again go back to almost like a personal loan or mortgage comparison, those are the same things as, like I said, your FICO score, how that impacts you being able to get a mortgage, the interest rate for your mortgage, then locking that rate, same thing. If you were to go through a mortgage process, you lock your rate at a certain point and it's held for a certain period until the money is actually issued, which is that settlement date of October 1st. So let's talk about what actually happened. The bond actually came out at a 2.02% interest rate. And bonds are not the same as, I keep referencing mortgages, it's not a flat rate. So that's the yield over, it's a 25-year bond. So the average yield over those 25 years is 2.02%. In the early stages, we're under 1%. It picks up a little bit so that the average yield comes out to 2%. But that is a historically low interest rate, which puts the district in a very, very good situation. Due to that, it actually created financial savings over the next 25 years. So over the next 25 years, we pay principal and interest on that bond. Due to the low interest rate, we are going to save a substantial amount of money in 25 years, over those 25 years, which ends up helping be a minimal impact on the Upper Darby School District budget for the years to come. Finally, one of the most positive impacts of the bond is obviously making funding available for current and future capital improvements. So I'm just going to put a rate chart here, and it's a little tough to see on the board here, but this is actually, I just want to note, this is a 10-year rate. So if anybody looks at it from a financial aspect, you'll see that the rates are lower than what we receive, but it's a 10-year rate. And again, just like a mortgage or a personal loan or a car payment or anything like that, the longer you go out, typically the rates go up a little bit. So we went 25 years, and in turn, those rates are slightly higher than what a 10-year rate would have been. But the idea here is to just show the board and the public how low the rate actually was. And if you look at that historic chart, how it just trends all the way down to the right. And then there's a little cutout on the bottom and shows you the district went through that rate lock like I referenced on September 9th. That ultimate low, historic low, was mid-August, or mid to late August. So in theory, we were just about at the absolute low of the interest rates, which is fantastic for us, and we got, you know, pretty lucky with the timing and the way things worked out. So this next sheet should look familiar for anybody who's been following along. This is the actual millage requirement study that has been presented multiple times. So this was actually from the April 28th presentation, and this was a projection at the time. And I know the numbers are a little small, but in this model, this goes back to the max parameters. It was just under $38 million of a bond issuance. And if you look at those, I have two areas that are squared out in purple, and I think they're the most key areas to look at just for comparative purposes. And you can see that on the left, column 4, where it says estimated Series 2020, $37,900,000. That's the $38 million I've been referencing. All the way at the bottom, it shows the district would have paid just over $63 million over 25 years. And that impact over 25 years, which we've referenced, you know, the $15 in the first year, $35 in a cumulative impact to a taxpayer, and that's cumulative. So each year it was $15.88, $19.22, and $10.02. And you can see that in column 13. And that builds up cumulative. It drops down to 0 after that because of the way that we've wrapped our debt. So that was a cumulative impact after the third year of $45 of an increase to an average taxpayer $75,000 assessment. In total, over 25 years, that would have cost that same taxpayer $1,100 over 25 years to help fund these projects that we'll talk about soon. And again, that was at $38 million. Here's the actual impact. The district issued a $30 million bond. You'll see here that it shows $26,510,000. We actually got $30 million in cash due to the premium built into the way the bond was marketed, okay? So if you look all the way at the bottom, over 25 years, it's going to cost the district $45,800,000. So if you just quickly compare those two, 60 plus million to the 45, and you take a difference of that 26 million versus the 38, you're looking at rough numbers, somewhere around $6 million of savings due to the interest over 25 years, roughly. And that's somewhat of it's an estimate. It's not anything like perfect and guaranteed. But you can see where the district really benefit from the advantage of that low interest rate. Obviously, the other big piece of that is we issued a smaller bond. Now, some may look at that, oh, great, great, we saved, even more money because we issued a smaller bond. But the issue with that, from my perspective, is if we had been able to issue up to the $38 million and strike while the iron was hot, you would have benefited from more savings in interest because it's interest over a higher amount at that lower rate. And with that, that money would have been used to help get these projects off the ground, which include Aronimink and Clifton Middle School. One of the main driving factors behind the reduction in the amount of money that was issued in that bond was our open appeal on the Aronimink project. When you issue a bond, you have to show the bond rating agencies and the people who are, as we market the bond to the financial institutions buying the bond, that there's a high chance you're going to spend that money on a project. So due to the appeal from our residents around Aronimink, we took a conservative approach and were actually advised not to issue up to the amount we were planning on issuing to fund that project. Unfortunately, that'll impact us and we'll have to see where interest rates go in the future. But it would have been an extreme benefit to the district to be able to get all the way up to the max parameters of that bond at $38 million at a 2% interest rate over 25 years. Because you just saw that was a historical low. And although we've planned on issuing bonds each year for the next few years to continue on our capital project program, it would have been in the best interest of the district, if able to actually push forward, and it would have been great to get those projects underway. So again, I'll reference, you see in column 4 in that purple square or rectangle, the $45.8 million. And then as you go over to column 12, 13, and 14, you can see that same impact, and there's a lesser impact where it's $15, $5, and back to 15. The cumulative impact here goes to $36.90, and over 25 years will cost an average taxpayer of the $75,000 assessment of $922. So that interest is obviously impacting that as well as the lower issuance of the bond. But it's still exciting to look at and keep that in mind, $922 over 25 years. And you're going to see what can we do with that money as a district. So that's where we get into discussing the capital improvements. So we've already had underway the toilet renovations. Drexel Hill and Stonehurst are just about done. We're going through some punch list items and finalizing those. There's one last additional bathroom that is being worked on at Drexel Hill that was a new facility being built into the middle school. But what we will be doing is, with this money, is evaluating Beverly Hills Middle School and putting a plan together to replace all the bathrooms just like we did at Drexel Hill. And also, we're looking at the elementary schools in total. So the plan would be to look and try to accomplish this upcoming summer, Beverly Hills and one other elementary school. And we haven't, there's a few on the list that are really in need of the work. I would love to do all of them. Obviously, we don't have that kind of money at this point, but we're going to keep chipping away at the schools. The one caveat with Beverly Hills is I believe we're going to try and look at whether we do that in one large phase or split it up into 2 phases over the next 2 summers to ensure there's, the project gets done in a timely manner and it's executed effectively. Next up would be the window replacements. Beverly Hills and Garriford, and these were discussed last year prior to the summer when we talked about the projects we were going to plan on doing this summer. Unfortunately, due to COVID, and I believe Marvin Lee revisited this a couple months ago at our committee meeting, or last month, the window replacements were actually delayed due to COVID. So the manufacturer of the window company dropped their production, I believe, below 60%. Luckily for us, right now our windows are in production, and we will start those on night work and be able to start replacing windows at those schools. Beverly Hills, this is the final phase. We've been working on those windows for, I believe, 2 summers now, prior to this summer. We also did a lot of work, the parking lot paving and concrete work district-wide. I think one of the most exciting ones for me is when you go up to Highland Park and you see how nice that parking lot looks now, and they build up the back steps. They're concrete steps up the back behind the school, you know, dealing with different safety and security concerns. It's great to see that, and it's aesthetically, visually aesthetic. Next up would be the 8201 North Lansdowne Ave renovation, which we've discussed in the past. That's the relocation site for administration. That design and development's well underway, and we're working through that project, and this bond will help fund the costs of that project. And lastly, as I mentioned, Aronimink Elementary renovation and addition in Clifton Heights Middle School. This bond will still be used to continue in the process with both projects to push them forward through the design, development, and eventually getting them underway. But that's what, when you look at that for, as I said, over 25 years, $922 for your average home, this is what the district is getting. And some of these projects have been completed, some are underway, and we will continue to work on the others. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Are there questions from the board or from the Dr. McGarry?
Yeah, I just want to take this as a moment. In the conversations we're having and the work that we're doing with Penn to try to bring the community together as a community advisory, we've been having our informal meetings, and we'll be going out soon to public meetings. And as Ms. Curry brought up earlier tonight, and the board members did, about equity, this is a prime example of equity and community engagement. Again, just to remind everybody, you know, we're in court trying to expand and renovate a building to free up space to bring kids back to this community that are traveling to attend school outside of the community. That's a significant equity issue. And as Mr. Rogers, Craig, who deserves a lot of credit for the work that he's done, we just finished an audit as well, and he's working long hours to complete that work. You know, we just presented a savings, and it takes courage for this board to move forward and for Craig to move forward with, despite the adversity at that time, hearing, you know, now's not the time, now's not the time. I think this board has delivered a multi-year plan to improve schools, financially responsible plan at 2% interest on the borrowing of these dollars. And you would think that a pandemic or other issues would be standing in the way of improving our school facilities for our students. Sadly, it's not that COVID is not getting in our way. And it's unfortunate that there are issues where the obstacles are the obstacles in the community, not the obstacles of a pandemic. And I think I'd be remiss as a superintendent if I didn't bring up the real equity issues that we're facing. At some point in time, we've got to come together and realize that our kids deserve this, the community deserves this, and we're fighting in court, spending taxpayer dollars to pull off a plan to renovate and expand a building that's owned by the district on district property. We're in court fighting to build a middle school on a property owned by the school district that our kids need. We have students in a middle school right now with 30 or more students in over 100 sections. We can't bring more students into school because of our spaces. We have teachers who are struggling because they're in classrooms without windows. And we want to know why we're in the situation we're in, and we're fighting against each other, not against the pandemic in this situation. So the equity issue rings true, not only in the access to the academics, but the facilities enhance that educational opportunity. And we are standing in that way, and we need to overcome those obstacles. Our kids deserve it, and this board has provided that financial reality to be able to have that happen.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. I think there are no more comments from the board, and I believe there are not any public comments on these items. All right, Mr. Rogers, do you want to review the agenda items?
Sure. Again, we had two agenda items tonight. The first was the 2021-2022 budget, the Act 1 timeline, which was informational. We went through and reviewed the important dates associated with the budget timeline and discussed future steps. Second was the 2020 bond issuance update, again, informational, and we provided the board an update on the finalized 2020 bond issuance and the positive impact that it will have on the district's capital plan.
Great, and to confirm, these are both informational items, right?
They are both informational.
Excellent. So then I will hand this meeting back to President Brown.
Thank you, Dr. Haig. A motion is in order for the adjournment of the Finance and Operations Committee meeting. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
So moved.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. The special school board meeting will please come to order. Dr. McGarry, can you please talk about how people can participate in tonight's special meeting? Thank you, sir.
Yes, Board President Brown. We've just concluded our committee meetings. We have a special voting meeting this evening. If you would like to comment on the two reports that are in front of the board this evening, you can send your comments to boardmeetingcomments@upperdarbysd.org or phone in at 610-789-7200, extension 2000. Please, it's important that you leave your name, address, and the report you are commenting on. The board will read your comment into the record before taking action on it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. I would like to note that all board members previously polled tonight are still present. The instruction and curriculum report, Mrs. Curry.
Thank you, Board President Brown. The instruction and curriculum report is in the hands of each board member and has been made available to the public. I move for its adoption.
Second, David Neal.
Are there any comments from the board? Ms. Buford, are there any comments from the public?
No, sir, there are no comments for that report.
Thank you very much. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, please signify by saying aye opposed and state your name for the record. Those abstaining, please signify by saying I abstain and state your name for the record. The motion carries. The facilities and use of facilities report, please, Mr. Fields.
Thank you, Board President Brown. I'm going to read out the facility. There's a number of items on the facilities report that are significant, so I will read it out. Facilities report, we've opened bids. Be it resolved that bids which were opened on Monday, October 26, 2020 for portable classroom HEPA filter units be received and referred to the proper administrative personnel. We've awarded a bid. Be it resolved that the Upper Darby Board of School Directors approves an award of portable classroom HEPA filter units to WB Mason Company on Shell Lane in Phoenixville, being the lowest bidder. Equality of kind, and quality having been considered as per the following tabulation. And that was square footage. The model is Fellows Air Max. It's $570. And then up to 1,300 square feet, another Fellows Air Max Model 4, $950. We are rejecting, be it resolved that Upper Darby Board of School Directors rejects all bids received for the Aronimink Elementary renovation project that were open on June 30th, 2020. The administration is directed to return all bond and insurance certificates to the bidders. Be it further resolved that the board authorizes the school district administration to rebid the project in its entirety. There are two memorandums of understanding. Be it resolved that the Upper Darby Board of School Directors approves a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the Clifton Heights Police Athletic League, this is the Clifton PAL, in Clifton Heights, PA, to allow the Clifton PAL appropriately scheduled access to the district-owned athletic fields located on Springfield Road, Clifton Heights, PA, for a 3-year period beginning November 1st, 2020 through October 31st, 2023. A second MOU, be it resolved that the Upper Darby Board of School Directors approves a memorandum of understanding, MOU, with the Boys Club of Clifton Heights, known as the Boys Club, P.O. Box 18, Clifton Heights, PA, to allow the Boys Club appropriately scheduled access to district-owned athletic fields located on Springfield Road, Clifton Heights, PA, for a 3-year period beginning November 1st, 2020 through October 31st, 2023. There is a lease termination. Be it resolved that the Board of School Directors approves the termination of the lease agreement between the district and Mr. Dimitri Konstantinidis and Diego R. Bertino, Theo's Auto Service. Originally effective July 1st, 2007, with the termination date effective at the end of January 31st, 2021. The lease termination has been reviewed and approved by the solicitor. There is another use of facilities report. A number of buildings will be used. A number of school buildings, gyms, cafeterias, and lobbies will be used next Tuesday for the general election, and a couple of items for youth soccer, a food drive, and a flag football tournament. In regards to the election, it's important. We will be having professional development that day. So in some of our buildings, we will have teachers taking training, right? And some might be virtual, but some will be in the building. So I encourage everybody that's voting on election day to not linger. You may want to see your neighbors and talk to them, but please understand there are other people in the building. We all want to be safe. So vote and then move on. The instruction and, the facilities and use of facilities reports are in the hands of each board member and have been made available to the public. I move for their adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the board?
Dr. Brown, President Brown, I'd like to make one comment.
Please go ahead.
It's I hope that the community around Aronimink can come together to support the renovation. Having to reject these bids and put the project back out to bid is going to cost everyone more money in the long run. And we're really trying to do this at the most inexpensive way possible. And for the folks that really do want to see those projects progress and continue and start, please use your voice. Write a letter to the editor, make a post on social media, let your councilman know that these projects going forward, and that's everybody in the school district, because that project affects everyone in the school district. We have kids in Highland Park and in Hillcrest that those buildings are bursting at the seams. And there is no way to make those buildings more efficient. We have to expand out of the buildings. And this is a building that we can expand. And that's my comment for that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from the board?
Yes, this is David Neal. I have
Please go ahead.
a question. Thank you. And I'll direct this at Dr. McGarry, or you could ask another one of your admin to answer. But since the topic was brought up that we're rejecting the bids for Aronimink, could you help explain why we are rejecting those? Where some may be thinking we could actually start certain projects. For example, the internal renovation of parts of the school. So why would we be rejecting the entire bid and rebidding?
Yes, as we discussed earlier with Mr. Rogers, the legal advice that we had is that because there was appeal under litigation, going out with the full amount of money or the max parameters on the bid was not advisable. It's also not advisable right now for us to move forward with the project while we're still in court, even the internal renovations at this time. We could certainly look into the possibility of doing that. However, the phasing in of the project will require us, for all the safety reasons and safety precautions we put into play that we've expressed publicly, most recently in our latest press release, is to provide the most amount of safety as we promised we would in the phasing of the project and the design of that school as far as the renovation and the expansion is concerned. The biggest concern, Mr. Neal, members of the board, is the cost of this project. We just explained that we saved millions of dollars on the potential of this project, but the appeal and the delay has the potential to increase the cost by 3.5% to 5% every year that we're in court fighting for this. We hope to hear soon about where we are on the legal battle that we have with Aronimink, but we really up against even the internal renovations moving forward without a full ruling on the appeal.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry.
Are there any other comments from the board? Hearing none, Ms. Buford, are there any comments from the public?
There is a comment from Mr. Tom Scholl, located at 231 North Bishop Avenue in Clifton Heights, PA. Comment was received on the 27th at 2:07 p.m. via email. This comment is received regarding the facilities report, the special voting meeting. Comment begins, I want to first apologize for not being able to attend in person. As both a resident of Upper Darby Township and as the current president of the Clifton Heights PAL, I would like to take this time to express my appreciation for all the time and energy that has been put forth by the board working toward a resolution to a problem that exists in our community. I believe it is fairly easy to recognize that there is no simple solution that will be accepted by everyone, and balancing the approach to please the masses is often a daunting task. That said, as the president and fellow community member, I recognize the importance of good facilities and education for our young children. It is vital for them to have the best opportunities so that they can become a successful member of society and one day be able to give back to the community we all share and see a need to improve upon. It is our job and should be the priority as elected officials and volunteers to do whatever is necessary to find a middle ground for the greater good. I want to also extend my appreciation and gratitude to the school board for their willingness to work with the Clifton Heights PAL, specifically around the MOU and the use of the facilities moving forward. As everyone is aware, the field and facilities provide a safe haven for the children to be able to have some constructive time in an organized fashion, at the same time learning how to assimilate into society while learning life lessons of fair play, teamwork, dedication, and hard work. Again, the PAL board members and volunteers recognize the difficulty in this situation and want to extend our appreciation to those involved in making these tough decisions for our children. End of comment. That concludes our comments.
Thank you. All those in favor of the facilities and use of facilities report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by saying I oppose and state your name for the record. Those abstaining, please signify by saying I abstain and state your name for the record. The motion carries. We are now at the time for the public hearing. We will now read both emailed and phone comments, which are subject to the 3-minute time limit and must include the commenter's name and address.
This comment is from James Santora, located at 5228 Apache Lane in Drexel Hill. This comment was received on the 25th at 11:58 p.m. via email. The comment begins, I'm writing you regarding the potential high school schedule that was published recently. Upon returning to school, it shows that all periods will be moved up. This will have a major impact on the students to participate in VOTEC at Delaware County Technical High School morning session. Morning session does not end until 10 a.m. The students start getting dismissed after that. Students taking the bus or driving have no opportunity to participate in the third period class at Upper Darby High School, and this is not acceptable. We encourage students to take part in VOTEC in order to potentially have a career in the trades, medical fields, cosmetology, and other fields. Please take them into account when schedules are being voted on. Anything less than participating in the regular third period class is not equitable to the students affected. Please, please, please consider all of the students when making your decision. I have faith in the high school administration to figure this out and had discussions with them regarding this. However, wanted to bring it to your attention prior to your vote. Thank you for listening. End of comment. And I believe Dr. McGarry reached out to Mr. Santora, not sure if he was able to reach him. Dr. Manfrey, sorry. The next comment is from Thomas P. Kent, located at 17 North Sycamore Avenue in Clifton Heights. This comment was received on the 25th at 10:19 a.m. via email. Comment begins, why are the board meetings still being held virtually? With teachers working in the classroom, why are you not holding meetings in person? If students are to return to school, why aren't parents allowed to attend these meetings again? If you're willing to send the students back, what are you doing to show that the leaders of the school district aren't afraid to go back? Leadership is from the front, not the back. End of comment. The next comment is from Michael Forbes, located at 3443 Verner Street in Drexel Hill. This comment was received on the 26th at 6:32 a.m. via email. Comment begins, in thinking about the reopening of schools, I just ask that you seriously consider the negative effects that virtual learning is having on our special needs students and young learners. I implore you to stick with the plan of reopening schools for those students in particular, even if you need to make adjustments for other students who may be responding well to virtual learning. My son is in autism support and had lost so much progress by not being in school to work on his IEP goals. I have been preparing him for returning to the classroom, and I worry about further backslide if he is forced into virtual learning any longer. I know COVID numbers are increasing, but my other child, who attends Catholic school, has been back since September, thriving in in-person learning, and they have no incidents of COVID in the building so far. Please continue to plan to bring these kids back to in-person learning as planned next week. End of comment. President Brown, that concludes our comments for the evening.
A motion is in order for adjournment of the meeting.
I have a comment before we adjourn. Thank you. On Monday, October 26th, yesterday, there was an unfortunate incident with Philadelphia police and a civilian. I bring this up in this space because I think it ultimately affects everything that we do here. The relationships that we have with our community, the relationships that we have with our police department. This incident, though it occurred in West Philadelphia, has impacted our entire Market Street corridor from Upper Darby down to Northeast Philadelphia or the Frankfurt area. With protesting, which has then turned into riots, vandalism, and looting. Our police department has been impacted. Our community is impacted. our kids are impacted, our families are impacted. So I just want us to keep all of that in mind, that an incident that occurs in Philadelphia involving another city's police department, these incidents trickle over into the same inequities that we talk about within our school district. These are still shop owners that their kids attend our schools that have to board up or close down their businesses. Our police force, their kids are in our school district. We are impacted, and so on behalf of the school board, and I think the administrative staff, we are standing somewhere in thoughts and concern with the peace for Philadelphia in this incident and how it has impacted, I think, everyone in the community. End of message.
Thank you, Ms. Dawes, for that comment. I think the community advisory board that we're putting together goes a long way towards trying to prevent things like that happen in Philadelphia happening in our backyard. Obviously, with our close proximity to Philadelphia, as you stated, we're affected by when every life is lost, we're adversely affected by the senseless loss of life. But I think, we're trying to do the right things to bring the community together, to have an understanding, to foster better relationships, better understanding, better appreciation of all of the cultures and diversity that we have in our township. So I think we're on the right track, and I'm hopeful that things will snowball in the right direction and we can prevent things like that from happening. But thank you for bringing that up.
From the curriculum that we're now looking to introduce to everything that we have done here since, I think, going into COVID, since the shutdown, has been about these instances. Our relationships with the police department, none of that has gone away, and Dr. McGarry talked about that earlier. Even though we're in this pandemic, we have been courageous to still push forward on all of these initiatives that are so important in spite of the pandemic. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. A motion is in order for adjournment of the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thank you.